Hey guys, welcome to this video. Welcome back to my channel. My name's Nicole, and today I'm really excited because I'm going to be doing a video all about the books I've read so far this year. Sorry about the lighting, it's a bit gloomy right now. I don't know why the weather's like reverted back to February. We literally had a heat wave 2 weeks ago, but living in England, I guess that's just what happens. So first of all, I read Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, and this is a book about a man called Charlie Gordon who has a below average IQ, and this is the thing, he's so selfless and he wants to get better for other people in a way, and it's written in a series of diary entries. It's really clever the way that it's written. It feels like you are actually reading it from Charlie Gordon's point of view, like more than just the standard diary entry kind of books. But Charlie Gordon is so precious. You really understand his trauma, his hopes, his dreams, his fears, the things that he loves, and that journey as he becomes more intelligent about his struggles with accepting his past self and his past life, and how sad it is when he realizes how unfairly he was treated just because he wasn't as intelligent as well. And it's such a beautiful book that I think really is essential reading, and it truly makes you value the importance of compassion and empathy so much more. So I'm so glad that I started off the book with this. And just like a random side note, but I've been re-watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You know the first or second episode of season 1 when Jake Peralta has a mouse in his drawer and it's called Algernon? The mouse is called Algernon. Oh, and the plot is about Charlie Gordon and how he takes part in this science experiment and improves his IQ, and then it's about how he sees other people, how other people see him, and kind of like how unjust society is really, and also about how science dehumanizes the subjects of the experiment too. So yeah, 5 stars. And then this is a pen that my friend B got me because she was like, oh, I saw that you use a fluffy mic pen, so you could use this. And wait, if you can't see flashing stuff, you might want to like skip this, but it flashes as well. Isn't that so cool? So then I read Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I have like half the book's physical version, the other half, because I buy books if I know that it's going to be like a good book, like, or if it's at the Works, because the Works sells books for literally £4. It's crazy. So some of the trashy romances, but also I read a lot of books online and libraries, because libraries are underrated, guys. But yeah, I read Belladonna. I'd give it about 3.5 stars. This trilogy is just all about this girl called Signa, and she basically can't die because when she's about to die, death comes in and saves her. So yeah. It's not necessarily original, but it is a fun quick read. But looking back on it, I can't remember that much necessarily of the plot. And whilst it was a fun murder mystery, the fact that the male love interest Death, he's like an immortal. She, the 19-year-old main character Signa, is 19. Like, and something about the immortal with the 19-year-old girl just doesn't sit right with me, especially because he's been watching over her since birth, since she was 1 month old. So it's not even like they met and she happened to be 19. He has seen her grow up. Like, and the more I think about it, the more off-putting the book gets. Also, he keeps calling her Little Bird, and it doesn't make sense. Like, the nickname just spawned out of nowhere and it stuck, and it's not even a nice nickname either. But I did find the plot twists quite interesting. And I really liked one of the characters called Blythe. She was my favourite. So that's why I read the second book called Foxglove. And this one I liked a bit more. I think the writing was better. There was more focus on Blythe, which was better. But as it is with like second books in trilogies, there's not as much plot necessarily. Like, there was a love triangle, but then it was never a triangle. It was like a semicircle at best. It fell very flat, but I did like Blythe. The middle one was just a bit repetitive, so I'd probably give it 3.5 stars as well. And this time I did count how many times Little Bird was said, and take a guess. 21 times. Yeah, 21 times. So that definitely contributed to some of the stars being taken off. Then I read a book called Good Grades and Mystery Games by Janisha Boswell, and it's self-published, so I don't want to be too harsh, but I'd probably give this about 3 stars because it was a romance but with like a murder mystery plot as well. And I feel like because the author was trying to do too much, both sides fell a little bit flat. And even though there were Taylor Swift references, it was just too long. And there was this one thing that really annoyed me, which was one of the main characters, Scarlett Voss, who's, I think her family's part of the Italian mafia or something, which was so random. But she kept saying, I love my friends, and then complaining about her friends. It seemed like she was the problem, to be honest. The next book, I am going to ramble. So then I read Caraval by Stephanie Garber. It's like garbage. Because this was bad. I did not enjoy this book. I give it 2 stars, but when I think about it, I don't think I've read that many books that I've disliked even more. So possibly even 1 stars. It just didn't make sense. Like the world building, it had so much potential, but the author just did not explain things. Like if you have a magic system, you have to have some rules, some foundation. Did this one have any? No. It was like the main character who was so annoying. She was like insufferable. I didn't like how the book was from her point of view because she was just boring. She just fell in love with this random guy she didn't even know because he was somewhat attractive. And her sister, oh my god, Tella really got on my nerves as well. But she would, you know, rightfully ask a question about this magical world because they had, I think it was to escape a marriage to this man that they didn't like. The sisters, Scarlett and Tella, they travelled to this magical island circus place called Caraval, and if you managed to win a bunch of like quests, then you could get a wish and then you could do whatever you wanted with that. So when she would ask a question to one of the actors in Caraval, they'd just go, sorry, I don't know the answer to that because only like the Grand Master or whatever the head of the circus is called, only he knows, and that's not me. Like, you can't just patch up these massive glaring holes in your world with a sorry, only one person knows the answer and that's not me. I didn't care about Scarlett and Julian as a couple. The ending didn't really make sense, and then it kind of like made the whole story pointless, the way that things ended. Because like the small plot twists were okay throughout the book, but then the last one was just so big and far-fetched that I just literally was like, why did I read all those pages for this? Like, what was the point? So I did not enjoy Caraval, if you can tell. But then I read Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, and this is the sequel to Divine Rivals, which was one of my favourite books last year. And Ruthless Vows ate it up. Like, it was so good. Iris and Roman have my whole heart. They are my favourite book couple. They are the epitome of unconditional love because they literally go through the trenches and they know how dangerous it is, how risky it is to still fight for love, but they continue to do so even though they've suffered so much and they're so vulnerable, but they still choose to shed their armour for each other. And I think that's just so beautiful. I will say this book has a lot more focus on the fantasy mythological elements, so some people might like it. I didn't really like it as much as Divine Rivals, but I still could appreciate why it was so important to move the plot forward and improve the world building too. And also all the other characters were amazing as well, and I think all in all it was just a really well written book. And then I read I Hope This Doesn't Find You by Anne Liang. This 5-star read. It's like an academic rivals to lovers story where the main character Sadie, she, instead of going to therapy, she writes emails basically hating on everybody who pisses her off, which, you know what, that's so real, but she doesn't send them out. And then one day they do all get sent out, and it goes to her teachers, it goes to the people who are slacking in group presentations, and it's about her complaining about them. But most of them go to a guy called Julius, who is her academic rival. And this had so much East Asian Chinese representation, so I ate that up. And it was just so lovely to see the character development. There was also this one scene where she stands up for Julius, and that was super duper cute as well. So I would highly recommend. Then I read Emma by Jane Austen. I love Pride and Prejudice and I absolutely loved Persuasion. But then this book just fell flat for me, which is a shame because this one's meant to be like the one that all the Jane Austen fans love. But I gave this 3 stars because for me it dragged. I really liked Emma as a main character. Like, I know that she was a bit annoying and frustrating at times, but I liked seeing that side of her and seeing how she grows and she accepts her mistakes and wants to be better. And I do think she genuinely cared for Harriet. But I just thought it was too long, and I went into it thinking it would have a really good romance. Like, you know, Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion, we get crumbs before like the big reveal, but it felt like Mr. Knightley was genuinely just her brother. And then, because people are like, oh, he cares about her enough to tell her when she's wrong, but that just seemed like he respected her, not that he loved her. And although the line, if I loved you less, I might be able to talk about it more, I love that line, I can still recite it, but there was no proof of that, and it just felt very underwhelming. Maybe in the future I'll reread it, but yeah, 3 stars. Because that sent me into a reading slump, I picked up an Ali Hazelwood book. I just want to preface this by saying I do not read paranormal, and I held off reading this for months because I was like, ooh, vampires and werewolves. Like, I've not read or watched Twilight, to be honest. I've seen clips, obviously, and I don't know, and I don't want to know what the Omegaverse is either. And so, yeah, if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. Those, like, scenes were not my favourite. So, I would give 4 stars. And it's still high because the writing was obviously great, the banter, obviously great, and an issue that I know a lot of people have with Ali Hazelwood books is that the main character can be a bit annoying and like quirky and over the top, but Misery was so cynical and so funny and snarky that I think if you don't like a typical Ali Hazelwood book, you might still enjoy this. And the werewolf Lo and Misery the vampire, their relationship was just really cute to see, and Misery has such a beautiful friendship with a girl called Serena. And if you know me, I love female friendships, and Lo has a younger stepsister, and the way that he treats her was so cute and endearing as well. And this book is about a vampire called Misery, and she's like collateral for the vampires, where she gets sent to the human territory. So if the vampires were to attack the humans, then the humans could kill her, and her dad is head of the vampires. And then her best friend goes missing, so in order to track her down, she makes a deal where she marries the alpha called Lo. Like, sometimes you just have to accept it, block it out, and just keep reading it. You can't go into this seriously, and you will cringe, but it's all part of the Ali Hazelwood experience. And after that, I read by Annie Crown, and yes, I know that this is adapted from Wattpad. I have never had Wattpad, so maybe I'm just like a few years late to the phase, I guess. But I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars because Kendall's only personality is being a reader, and you know what? I get that. And it was really cute. There was virtually no build-up of the relationship, and it was really unrealistic, but I still ate it up, and I thought that their relationship was like pretty healthy. There was character development too, how Kendall, she really struggles with like constantly applying tropes to her life. She's like, oh, if this happens, then this is going to happen because I read about it in a book, and her friends really push her to get out of her comfort zone, and then she really becomes more confident in putting herself out there and stuff. So that was really cute to see, and there was like a full circle moment with the epilogue, which was pretty cute. And then I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett, and I think this book is a 3.5 because whilst I really appreciated the world building and I thought that the settings were gorgeous and so lush and beautiful, like take me to that place where she was doing her research, I felt like it just dragged, and halfway through the plot literally did a 180 and changed. It was kind of random because the first bit was really cozy and like slow. And then all of a sudden it's like action and like kidnapping and all this wacky fairy stuff that was just like, what the hell? And I didn't like the romance between her and the guy called like Wendell Bamblebee or something. Like, I can't make this up. He was actually called Bamblebee because he never seemed to ask her any questions. He never seemed to show her any interest, and then all of a sudden he's in love with her. Like, I don't think that was really realistic, although I guess the book was written from her perspective and she maybe was just really oblivious. But also, I read this book after I finished doing my EPQ, which is like this research project. So I had read so many scientific journals, articles, footnotes, and this book was written very much like that. So I think if you're looking for a quick fantasy read, this book is maybe not for you. Next, I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. 5 stars, obviously. Is anyone surprised? No, silence. This was the second time reading this, and I love Emily Henry's writing, and I loved Nora, the main character, and I think her struggles being a woman who simultaneously wants to go far in her career, but then also having to struggle with the double standards that come with it. Like, she is known for having a cold facade, and if a man had that, he'd be celebrated and championed, but when she has it, she's called a bitch and stuff. And the way that this is really talked about in the book is something that is really well done. And her and Charlie's banter was so fun to read. Like, I probably giggled out loud. It's so fun to read their back and forth jokes with each other. And this book just made me feel so fuzzy inside, because she's born in New York and I never ever want to go to America, but the way that Emily Henry writes about New York and like how it feels so much like a community almost, that I thought was just really beautiful to see. And there's also some really cute kids in here because Nora's sister has some kids. So yes, this was such a good book. I would recommend it to literally everybody. And then I read Powerless. So this book I think is so controversial nowadays, and I'm really sorry guys, because I don't have like a I hated this, I love this perception. I just like this. Like, I would give this 3 stars because it was like really fun. When I finished it, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. But when I think about this, now that I've let it cook, it wasn't as good as I'm pretty sure I felt after I finished it. The amount of times that the main character says I feel powerless was like cringe, and then the amount of times she talks about how the male love interest Kai, about how his eyes were grey like storms, and then the amount of times he calls her eyes blue like the oceans. Like, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. You could fill pages of this book with just eye descriptions alone. And then I'm pretty sure he kept calling her vicious little thing. Sir, what? So that was like ick. The banter was like, oh, I hate the word banter, man, but I don't really know what else to say. The conversation, it was pretty good. It was like a 6.5 out of 10. So it wasn't like I am absolutely devouring this and I need this injected into my blood right now. But it was still fun to read. I did like it when they were like stitching up each other's life-threatening wounds. That's like best bonding exercise, I guess. And I will just say I haven't read Red Queen, so I know a lot of people are really pissed about Powerless because they're like, it's a Red Queen copy. I think that's probably why I enjoyed it more than some other people did, because I didn't feel too defensive about the fact that it's similar to some other books. But also I feel like that's not really enough justification to really hate on a book, because in literature you will get like recycling of some ideas. Then I read the sequel, which came out like the start of July, because so this is the works edition. That's so pretty. So yeah, I basically got the book for the sprayed edge. And this book, the writing was better. He didn't call her vicious little thing once, so yippee. And there were barely any eye descriptions, which was great. I will say, because it's the second book in a trilogy, it wasn't as like plot driven, so there was a lot more focus on the relationship. and they kept, because they're like meant to be sworn enemies, but and they say that they hate each other but they don't, and so they were like, let's just pretend, and then they could like kiss. But the whole can we pretend thing got a little bit dull after a while. I did still enjoy this book, so I would give this 4 stars, and there were some cute quotes, but I really don't care about the love triangle. Like, Lauren Roberts, just stop pushing the love triangle. I don't care about the second guy. So I read that obviously like quite recently, but just to put that with Powerless. But after Powerless, I read Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. I gave this 5 stars. It was like the most whimsical, wacky, goofiest book I've ever read in the best way possible. Like, I could not even physically fathom coming up with some of the ideas that Bulgakov has in this book. It was just so fun to read, and it did take a while because, as you know, Russian literature is, I couldn't remember who was who, the names were too long, there were too many characters, but it was such a good book that I would highly recommend to anyone who wants to get into reading classics. I thought that Bulgakov's writing style incorporates plot with characters and description so well. After you finish reading this, it's like, wow, that was a good book, you know. Things like Reckless, I finish it, I'm like, that was a fun book, but things like Master and Margarita, it's like, that was a good book. And the dialogue was really funny as well. Like, I audibly laughed out loud in some scenes. And then I read The Love Hypothesis. I hate these TikTok stickers so much. Oh, story. There's an Oxfam near my school, and I was thinking I really want like a goofy, silly book. And I went in there, and this was there. Literally like, look, brand new, £2. So I got it. I literally finished it in half a day. I'm not even joking. But I will say, you guys don't get the love hypothesis like I do, because I really love biology, and this has a lot of biology references that I found funny. So when some of you guys are like, oh, this was so cute, the romance, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but did you understand the biology references? When she said something about like, oh, my p-value is 0.06, I giggled. That was pretty funny as well. So this is 5 stars. Ali Hazelwood's writing, is it cringy? Yes. Are her characters slightly annoying? Yes. But I still ate it up. It's still so fun to read. I would still recommend this to everybody. Then I read Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and I feel like this is another unpopular opinion because I did not enjoy this book. I would give it 2.5 stars. It was okay, sure. Paul Grant is a billionaire, world's hottest billionaire according to some magazine, and then Rosie, she is Ford's best friend's younger sister, and apparently Ford has had a crush on her for 10 years. I don't buy that, to be honest. I feel like this book did a lot of telling, not showing. Like, he kept saying, oh, I've liked her for so long, blah, blah, blah. But I would have preferred if he was like showing how he'd liked her for so long, you know what I mean? Rather than just literally telling us he's thought about her for so long. I just didn't care about the relationship. And his relationship with his kind of daughter was cute, but you do not talk to a 12-year-old like that. Like, I don't think Elsie Silver has actually seen and talked to a 12-year-old, because they are tiny and they are saying things like level 10 Gyat Riz W Ohio. They're not acting like that 12-year-old does. And I felt like there wasn't really that much chemistry between Ford and Rosie. The banter was like meh, Rosie was cringy, and it just feels like one of those couples where in 5 years' time you're not going to be together anymore. And then I tried another romance book, The Rule Book by Sarah Adams. 2 stars, maybe 1 star, we'll see how I feel. This book was not that fun. Like, the plot was okay. It's like second chance romance where, I've even forgotten their names, where the female main character is assigned to be the agent to the male main character because he's a sports star. The female main character was so cringy. Like, the things that she was saying and the internal dialogue, the way that it was written on the page, it had her thoughts in brackets as well, like adding on extra stuff, and it was just like, I don't care about your internal dialogue. My phone ran out of storage, so it didn't record everything else after. But you know what, I think the lighting has gotten better, so every cloud has a silver lining, I guess. Maybe I was a bit harsh before, but yeah, the main character was just really annoying. But then after the rule book, I read A Thousand Ships by Natalie Haynes, and guys, this is a book. Okay, this is a book. This was so good. It's a Trojan War retelling, but through multiple perspectives of the women who were involved. Not just the important women, but also the ones who really aren't mentioned at all in Greek mythology. I think Natalie Haynes' writing style is just so enthralling and captures emotions so deeply, and the descriptions were gorgeous. She weaves together these women's stories so beautifully and effortlessly, and you genuinely feel so connected to the women, and you like viscerally react to their circumstances. I was smiling, crying, my jaw was dropping as well, and I devoured it all. So I would highly recommend, not only if you're into feminist Greek mythology retellings, but also in general. I think it gives a voice to those women who suffered in the original Greek mythology retellings, whose pain is really easily brushed over. So the focus on women is what I love to see. Because there are multiple perspectives, it is a little bit confusing, but I still gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. And then I read The Secret Network of Nature by Peter Wohlleben. I should have asked my friend who does A-level German how to pronounce the last name, but I would say this is a 3.5 book. It's very interesting, and I think it's very accessible as well. There's not a lot of like fancy scientific terminology and stuff like that, and it covers a lot of topics, but I think because of that you don't really learn about each one that deeply, so it doesn't really stick with you. Like, I've forgotten quite a few of the topics in this book. And also Peter keeps yapping about the forest that he owns in Germany. Like, Peter, I'm sure you're a great guy, but I picked up a non-fiction book, not an autobiography. Save that for something else, because I don't want to hear about your life stories and stuff. No offense, like, I just wanted to learn about science mostly, and his stories didn't really feel relevant all the time either. I saw this in a Goodreads review that I really agree with, and the way that he applies his circumstances to actual science, it's not hard evidence for what he's trying to argue in a way. So that was a bit but it's such a pretty cover. And then finally, Thursday Murder Club, and this book is such like a cozy fuzzy read. It's so British. Like, it's like if you open it up, it starts singing God Save the King. It's so British. It feels like a Sunday roast or an English breakfast in book form, and it's just so precious. Also, this had such beautiful and emotional displays of love that had me tearing up. It's very witty, and the characters have such distinct personalities. I think the pacing is definitely slow, but obviously that's because they're like 8-year-olds, so it is like that. But I just felt like the ending didn't really make that much sense to me either. So I'm going to give it 4 stars. Also because my friend was telling me about how her ex said that this was their favourite book. So that kind of brought this book down a little bit for me. So that was all the books that I've read so far this year. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your opinions on any of the books I've said. I hope you have a great day and love you guys. Mwah. It's so beautiful that like an amalgamation of different words on a page can just make you feel so much. That's just what I love about reading, yeah. Hey, getting deep.